The film opens at a train station where Joe, a train guard, is unable to carry out his duties because of illness and receives a letter of rejection. Joe observes Ellen in the background while the supervisor urges him to carry out his duties. Joe boards the train and checks tickets after deciding to work overnight duty. Joe strikes up a conversation with Ellen and her crush, Ellen, while they are out for the inspection. In order to conceal her heartbreak, Ellen excuses herself from having a drink after work. A tremendous roar reverberates throughout the train as it moves toward its destination. After looking into it, Joe discovers that the driver struck a wild deer that became lodged in the wheels. The motorist is attacked by an unidentified hairy thing after hearing a noise behind him. The driver is taking too long to locate him, according to Joe and Ellen. When Joe calls the police for assistance, they tell it will take 4 hours because of the strong storm. The passengers are upset and believe that the 4-hour delay is absurd. To break the ice, a self-centered middle-aged man named Mr. Selfish offers that everyone step outside and walk to the next station. As Joe guides the group to the following station, they keep hearing noises coming from bushes nearby. Joe and Ellen offer to investigate the source of the noise by going into the forest. Joe is one of several travelers who are afraid that a werewolf would attack their train. Fearing that the creature is a werewolf, they dash to the train entrance. The old woman bleeds profusely after the werewolf bites her leg. She is assisted by Joe and the other passengers, but the train is scratched by the werewolf's claw. To avoid the werewolf's noises, the group chooses to keep quiet. Joe doesn't follow Ellen's advice to call the police for assistance. A technical passenger shows up and says there is a fuel leak in the train's engine. The werewolf breaks through the door and assaults the passengers as Joe and the others prepare to battle the monster. The werewolf breaks one of the windows as the occupants scream in despair. Blood splatters on the glass as the werewolf pulls the occupants outside. The werewolf flees as the passengers band together to form a barrier that blocks all entrances. By saving energy and getting ready for possible attacks, the group gets ready for any disaster. In order to preserve themselves, Mr. Selfish suggests that Joe go outdoors and be ready for the werewolf's return. As the group's health deteriorates, Mr. Fat disappears. Due to the werewolf attack, Mr. Fat is killed. When Joe and Mr. Selfish attempt to flee, the werewolf overwhelms them. Joe saves Mr. Selfish's buddy Ellen from certain death. Ellen gets stabbed in the stomach, and Joe is attacked by the werewolf. The werewolf chokes the technician after Joe and Mr. Selfish strike it with weapons. According to the Indian guy, anyone who is bitten by a werewolf will contract the infection and turn into a werewolf. Joe destroys the werewolf with a fire extinguisher when it resurrects from the dead. The elderly woman begins to change as a pack of werewolves prepares their assault. The elderly man rejects Mr. Selfish's attempt to murder her. A group of travelers, including a technician, are stranded on a train in this tale. A woman called Joe is among the passengers attempting to get off the train. The technician finds a leak in the train's engine and attempts to patch it with the assistance of an Indian man. But the train is surrounded by werewolves, and the elderly woman turns into one of them. Their one hope is sabotaged when the train stops and the werewolf bites the Indian guy. In an attempt to get off the train, Joe and Ellen stab the elderly werewolf with a huge spear. Joel erects a barricade to keep the werewolves out of the train while he tries to flee. Ellen and Joe escape after Mr. Selfish, who is stranded on the train, attacks Joe with his weapon. The werewolves move for Joe and Ellen as the technician shows up to save them all. Ellen flees, but Joe stays behind to divert the werewolves. The werewolves overwhelm Joe, who then stabs the werewolf in the stomach. Ellen and Mr. Selfish are lost in the woods as the action moves to the train station.